Welcome back to the Art Barn Studio. My name is Brannan Lawson. We are going to be doing another kids art lesson. Today's art lesson is collage. So you are going to need scissors and some glue. We are going to be collaging a toucan. So here's the cool thing about collage. You still get to paint. This is made from painted paper. You still get to draw. You have to kind of draw out the shapes, and then you get to cut and glue. So you get a bit of everything. That's why I love doing collage. So our first step is you have to paint the paper. So I've actually used blue watercolor to paint the background. That's going to be one part of our art lesson. And then you're going to need several different other pieces of paper using different types of paint. You can use watercolor or you could use tempera. So, and these are just scrap papers I have from my studio. So you're gonna need shades of green painted paper for our leaves. And I have two shades. I have a bright green and a, not bright green. Then you're gonna need a piece of black painted paper. This is your toucan and his tail. A piece of blue painted paper for his eye. Orange painted paper for his beak. And then I have a lighter piece of orange paper for his belly. And then within my art lesson, I have created a template of all those pieces. So you will need to print this out and cut these pieces out. So when you are tracing them, it will be what you put all together. Now, here's a good tip that I have learned as an art teacher of how to trace on painted paper. If you take your template that you cut out and you lay it on the painted side and you trace it, and I know as we learn how to trace, there's a technique. You have to hold down the template and trace it. If you're not holding it down, the template moves everywhere and then you've got a weird shape, not the shape that you wanted. If you do it on the painted side, you've ruined the painted paper because then you've got lines everywhere and you can't really erase it on the painted paper. It just doesn't work out. So here's a tip. You take your painted paper, you flip it over, lay the template down, and trace it. And if you've ever baked cookies, I know I have tried to teach my kids, we never want to put the cookie cutter in the center because then we can't fit as many cookies. It wastes a lot of the space. Always lay the template or the cookie cutter on the edge, trace it from there so you have extra pieces if you ever want to make more items. Because again, like you can see, I cut a lot of things out of these extra painted pieces of painted paper. So make sure you print out the template. We're going to go over, I have another video I'm going to link to you, creating painted paper, because as you can see, these have different pieces of texture that I've used, different brushes, different types of paints. This is watercolor, acrylic paint with a roller, another acrylic paints. This is on like tissue paper. So there's different ways to give your paper texture using whatever you have at home. Forks, you can paint with a fork. Again, different types of paint. So I'm going to link that video so you can see me creating painted paper for a different project. And then you can use that paper within any collage, but for this one, your toucan. So go grab what you need. Let's get started. A little bit about our project, the collage toucan. So again, step one is we have to paint the paper. Again, like I showed you in my introduction, is you can use different scraps of paper, and it could be colored paper, but I like to be able to paint and then put this all together because it's like a two-step. You still get to paint. And on the template that you print out, I even tell you what colors you need: black, a yellow, white. It could just be a light yellow, orange, brown, and then green painted paper. So not only do you have to cut these out to trace the template, it also tells you what colors you'll need. So I'm using my semi-moist tempera paints. I have a bunch of pieces of 9x12 white student drawing paper. This is not fancy paper on hand. I'm just going to move through the colors that I have listed. I have to do a black, a light yellow, an orange, a blue, and even the thing to save paper is technically you don't need a whole 9x12 to create the templates. So you could even have the top part be a black painted paper and the bottom part be your orange, which would be your body, your tail, and your beak. Or you could have one student at your table painting black while the other one is doing a blue, while another one's doing orange, and then you cut that into smaller pieces to share to create your collage. So depending on how this lesson is being used will depend on how you will need it And then obviously you need your blue background. That is going to be where you put all of your pieces together. So I'm actually going to start with the blue background first. For our semi-moist tempera cake paints, you got to have water, and you need to just keep dipping water, paint, paper. You want to make sure that you just spread it out across the paper. This is going to be what we glue all the pieces on. You could use watercolor, just plain blue paper, whatever you have on hand. The fun thing about these art lessons is you can look at what you have and be creative with what you have. You don't have to do it exactly as I like to do the blue one first, the background, because I will get it out of the way and then this can dry. Because if I already had the pieces of painted paper, I could just go ahead and stick them on there. Okay, so there's the background. I'm going to quietly bounce my brush off the cup, wipe it off the side, dab it on my paper towel, lay it on there to dry. I'm going to move this away, and then we're going to keep moving through the other colors we need. I've painted the different painted paper, so while that's drying, within this lesson, you can go ahead and get your templates ready and then put them in a Ziploc bag until you're ready to use them on your painted paper. So scissors, and all you're doing is following the black line and cutting them out and then keeping them together to use with your painted paper. And I like to cut them off the paper first once I get them out. And you want to be careful. You do want to cut them exactly as they are on the black line, because if you cut around them and not cut on the black line, the pieces are not going to fit together. What I mean is this is not cutting it out. Yes, you've cut it away from the other pieces of paper, but when you lay this down on the paper, the shape you're going to get is the shape of the white paper, not the shape of the black line. So it is very important that you still continue to cut off all the white paper as you follow the black line, because you want the actual shape of the black line, not the paper you cut out. Okay, all this is trash. Now I have all my pieces. You can kind of put them together just so you can see. Make sure you have everything, because your limb will be glued first. Then actually your tail is going to be under the limb. The body's on top. Then you have your belly. That should fit if you cut it right on top of that. The beak, the edge is going to be slipped under your body. You have your leaves, and you'll be cutting multiple different leaves out, because you can see the leaves are going to come around the edge, and then your eye right on top. So it should look like this. So make sure you have all your pieces: tree, limb, tail, body, belly, eye, beak, and leaves. Again, this can be put in a Ziploc bag until you're ready to use them when your painted paper is dry. Okay, now I have my painted paper and my template cut out. So again, here's what we are going for. So again, you're going to take your painted paper. You'll need your scissors and your glue for this. And again, we don't trace it on the painted side. We're going to flip it over. So we just got to make sure what we're tracing is on the correct end. I don't want to trace the brown limb on the blue paper. So I'm going to flip it over. Again, I know the brown is here, the yellow is here, and the blue is here. Again, my pencil, or you could use a marker. I'm going to use a marker so you can see it better, but a pencil works good. When you trace it, again, you have to hold the template down, and you are using your tool to follow the template. And if you don't keep it held down, then it's going to move everywhere. And you want to make sure you're drawing on the painted paper, not on the actual template. So when I move it, I should see the shape on the painted paper. So there's the tree limb. And again, notice that I'm not doing it on the middle. I'm kind of not too close to the end because I know the end I didn't paint completely, but I'm as close as I can be. Okay, so I'm going to do this and continue to do this, and then we'll cut it all out together. Okay, so I've traced all my templates. Again, these little pieces can be used for someone else or later. And I've got all my pieces, so I'm going to get my scissors and start cutting them out. Again, you want to cut on that black line. You don't want to cut around it and just leave it. We want to actually see the shape. And I never throw away my extra painted paper. That's why I try to cut near the edge, so I can use it for other projects. And again, let me show you. So if this is the shape, if I just cut like this, yes, I see the template, but when you flip it over, this is the shape that you're going to be gluing down. That's not what we want to do. You want to stick to the black line so your shape actually looks like the template. Again, big pieces like this, we can spare and use it for other projects. So once I've got all my pieces, now the weird thing about this is going to be opposite of what you see here, because my template, maybe not, is going to be flipped. Yes, it's going to be the opposite direction because my template was, I flipped it over. So this example is going this way. This one's going the other way. Okay, so before we glue, I want to lay them down so we know to make sure. I don't want that white piece on the brown paper. Clip that off. So the edge of my tree limb is going to go on the edge of my paper. Again, my bird's body, the humps are going up. I'm going to slip his beak underneath there. This part's going to go right up to the edge of his body. It should match up pretty well. His eye, and then his tail is going to be under the branch like that. And then again, the leaves, we're just going to stick coming into the frame, wherever you like, or coming off the tree. Okay. So kind of when I know where everything's go, I'm going to just kind of slip it off to the side. So I use a glue stick. I prefer the glue stick. So I'm going to flip it, my piece over, make sure the glue is all over it. So my tail is going to go first. Then my tree limb, making sure I got glue all the way across. And then it's going to go over that tail, just that front end. Now, the beak has to go under the body. So what I'm going to do is I am going to glue the body first. Again, it should be kind of right above the tail, touching the branch. And then once I get it down, I'm going to quickly grab the beak, flip the beak over, and then I'm just going to pick it up and slide it under. So we want the beak to be under the body. So you kind of have to move fast so it doesn't get stuck. And then the yellow part, again, this curve is going to match up right there. It should be like the tip of the beak should be where the tip of the yellow is. And then the eye. Is going on the yellow part. And then before I move on, I'm going to take my marker and go ahead and draw a full circle, a little U in the top corner, and then color around it. And then the leaves. I do want to do before I glue the leaves on. You can do this before you glue them on or after you glue them on. It doesn't matter. I'm going to take 2 shades of green crowns, and I'm just going to take the leaf, draw a line down the center, and V's the veins. Again, you can use any shade of green. I'm just going to mix it up. So line, and then V's. Line, V's, and I may mix the dark and the light. Okay, and again, I'm going to mix a big leaf going into the picture with a little leaf. I'm just repeating this process. Okay, go ahead and make sure I turn my glue stick, put the top on, put my marker away. Now, this is an optional last step, is I used, again, some crowns to darken up my paper. And again, those purple spots of paint will dry. So like I'm going to get a black crown, and I don't do a lot of it. I just kind of gently, kind of to give it a little more texture. Black on the black, brown on the tree. Again, I'm not coloring the whole thing. I'm just lightly. Maybe some orange on the beak, which you can't really see that orange. Last but not least, I guess I'll put my permanent marker again. Don't forget to sign your artwork. So you have now finished your Toucan collage. So I hope you enjoyed it. Again, look at the different texture of the different paint. You can see that the tempera watercolor-ish type of paints don't bring as a vibrant color as our acrylic paints that I've used. So if you were wanting, and this is a heavier paper, this is watercolor paper, again, tissue paper, watercolor paper. So I use different types of paper. So you can see the difference techniques just by changing the type of paper and the type of paint that you use. You can have 2 different pieces of art. All right, guys, I know this was a little bit of a lengthy lesson. You learned a lot of skills. You learned what a template was, how to trace the template correctly, and how to cut things out and put it all together. So I can't wait to see your toucans and see how you created them. So don't forget, share your artwork.